These are babes that have gotten to the stage where they are all about either building themselves and building their careers, or they're all about settling down. Either way, it's not like they're really trying to chase fast and fun anymore. At least most of them, I don't see them really chasing fast and fun. So, of course, they want something a little bit deeper, they want something a little bit more stable, and they definitely want something that's long-lasting. Because hopping from dick to dick, from dude to dude...
The royal penis is clean, Your Highness.
Welcome to the Breakdown Podcast, where I talk about love, sex, and relationships from a guy's perspective, as well as a bunch of other guy shit. The man on the mic is a man who might find it hard to breathe if you've got that asthma. He is also a man who may include jumping to conclusions to his cardio routine. It is none other than your tall, dark, and mildly handsome man, Sir Denver B. And I am here to speak on dating. And I know for some of y'all, you hear that and you're like, oh my goodness, for the third time. Yes, I know, this is like the third episode I'm talking about dating, but I promise you it's not in the way that you guys think, okay? I want to try and do something a little bit different. It does relate to dating, but at least I'm trying to put something different into it, because I feel like I've been running around the same topic for like 2-3 episodes straight, and I feel like maybe I should try and switch things up a little bit. Or even though it's still in the same topic, at least I change the subject matter, or like I change, like the specifics of what it is that I intend on talking about. And I do hope that what it is that you listen to, you'll enjoy, so much that you listen all the way till the end. And should you like it, should you not like it, should you have a different form of feedback, or should you have a potential topic that you would like me to discuss, then you can always hit me up via the social media links that are in the description. I also mention them at the end of the episode, and they rarely ever change. And also my DMs are always open. So, you can send me that DM and I would be more than happy to check on it and handle it accordingly. Now, with that said, I do have a bunch of stuff that I want to talk about. Most of it revolves around dating. On one end, there's a bit of age factor in there, but on the other end, it's just how I feel, some people might be going through dates and they've kind of lost the idea of what a date is actually supposed to be, or at least why a date exists. But anyways, before I can get to any of that, I want to kick things off by talking about a content creator / influencer known as M. Albi or Mohammed Albi, or just Albi, who was recently on the Man Talk KE podcast, the one that usually has Eli Mwenda and Oscar Kome. And while he was on there, he just so happened to mention that, he is single, but he prefers millennial women over Gen Z women. And he was claiming that millennials, or should I say millennial women, are more emotionally deep and grounded, while Gen Z women tend to be more materialistic, and he's not really feeling that. And that kind of split opinions, because of course the millennial women were like, yes, and they were feeling pretty good about it. But the Gen Z babes were like, okay, I feel like this guy's going at us a little bit too hard. He's being a little bit too, general about it, because it's not like every Gen Z babe behaves like that. I have the clip which I'm going to allow to play before I can get into my thoughts on it, because people had very different views on it, but I want to give my own on this one because I feel like he might be right and wrong at the same time. But let me just play the clip, then I can get into my thoughts on it. So, without further ado...
I like millennial women.
Please say more.
I dislike Gen Z females.
Interesting.
Calm.
Interesting. Let him come.
Let him
talk it. There we go.
I feel like Gen Z females have gotten to a point where they're so numb, materialistically tied. Everything has to do with money. So if it's I love you, 10,000. I miss you, 20,000. You can't have any serious conversation with them. Yes. So I like chilling with millennial women. They are very nice. You can go deep.
Pause.
You're doing great. Mentally and emotionally deep. They just uplift you. You can talk about your dreams and they help you grow.
We're talking about millennial women.
Really?
Well, for me, I don't know if they're babying me. I don't know.
Something, yeah.
Yeah, but I just like millennial women. They're so nice.
Gen Zs, from what I hear, they want more emotional availability. They want more vulnerability.
Okay. Now, I'm gonna be very honest, I wouldn't have expected someone more so him to give that particular comment, because, if I'm not wrong, I should be around about the same age as him. Maybe he might be a year or two younger than me. So considering that he may be Gen Z, him saying that just seems a little bit different as opposed to what it is that I'm used to hearing. Now, granted, it's not a bad thing. It's actually nothing bad saying that you prefer millennial women or you prefer, older babes. Because, especially considering that I've been one of the guys who from the jump, with the beginning of this podcast, I've been very pro dating older women as opposed to a lot of the other guys on podcasts that are like, oh, you should go for a woman in her early 20s, blah, blah. Like, as someone that was very pro dating older women and is also still pro dating older women, like, what he's saying isn't bad. And everything that he's saying does seem particularly true for a certain level, at least to a certain degree, and I guess also depending on the woman. But in what he said, I know some people would agree or disagree, but I can kind of get why he's where he is as far as that thought process is concerned. And I can get it because on one end, like, yes, it seems like he was generalizing Gen Z babes a lot, but I feel like the reason why he has that sort of opinion is entirely based off of his personal experiences. Now, don't get me wrong, I do know the guy and it's not like I've spoken to him, but I can kind of get where he's at because this is someone who is an influencer. He's known fairly well on social media, and with that kind of fame, there's usually some level of expectation that's there. Now, for him, he tends to appeal more towards Gen Z babes, or at least he tends to appeal more towards Gen Zs than millennials. So if a Gen Z babe meets him, there's a pretty good chance that they'll know who he is, and they will think, you know what, if this is the guy, then let me see what I can get from him. Now, are they all numb and materialistic? No. But I do think that a lot of the ones that he may end up interacting with and that may end up giving him a lot of that attention may actually be that kind of babe, because they see him, they're like, okay, he's a good looking light skinned dude and he's been an influencer for a bit, so the expectation usually is that this is a guy that has money, especially even when you look at something as simple as his hairdo. Like, there's not that many broke niggas that have a big, good-looking afro with hair that are broke. So, of course, the assumption is that either he has money or he's from a family with money. So, there's that expectation that there's gonna be a bunch of money in this guy's pocket that he should be ready and willing to dish out. And when you go through that as a guy, when you have money, there's a point in time where you just get tired of that shit. Like, when you interact with a couple of different babes of roughly the same kind and type, and that's the same thing that they're angling towards, it can get very tiring. But when you look at most millennial babes, like most of these babes, actually every single millennial, maybe bar the last ones where I kind of fall in, are 30 and above, okay? These are babes that have gotten to the stage where they are all about either building themselves and building their careers, or they're all about settling down. Either way, it's not like they're really trying to chase fast and fun anymore. At least most of them, I don't see them really chasing fast and fun. So, of course, they want something a little bit deeper, they want something a little bit more stable, and they definitely want something that's long lasting. Because hopping from dick to dick, from dude to dude, just doesn't cut it anymore. They can't do that all the way till they're 50 because they know, like, it's not like they have all the time in the world to do that again and again and again and again. So I can get where his experience with the millennial women would probably fall, and I can also get where his experience with Gen Z babes would fall. Especially considering that most of these Gen Z babes, actually most Gen Zs, are in their early to mid 20s right now. Maybe a couple of teenagers, but most of them are early to mid 20s. So you find that if you have the bulk of them there in that period of time where they are basically having a lot of attention from guys, both young and old, and a bunch of those guys want to spend money on them so that, they can get some a little bit here and there, it's pretty unsurprising that they would kind of enjoy that chaos and they would want an influencer like Albi to kind of contribute to that. But if someone like Albi wants something a little bit more long-term, a little bit more deep, then of course they probably might not be able to cater to that need in as much as a millennial babe probably would. So I can totally get his opinions, I can get why he'd say that. The only part that I feel that it's wrong is the assumption that most Gen Z babes or all Gen Z babes are materialistic, of which I don't think that's the case. I've met a lot that aren't. So for the most part, I can say that that's not entirely true, but if that's based off of his experience with Gen Z babes, then I can totally get why he'd say that. But all in all, with all of that said, I am going to leave it at that and move it on to our main topic of the episode, which is about dating. But it's not about dating in the way that I've been discussing dating these past couple of episodes, because I feel like the past couple of episodes when I've been discussing the date and going out on dates, it's been very big on centering on the money. And the interesting part about it is, like, people seem to put so much focus on that and who's paying the bill and why this and this is the case. But in my opinion, I feel like that's one facet that shouldn't even be the biggest part out of the entire thing. But then again, I've been called wrong for that because, a man is supposed to be a provider, blah blah. But all in all, it is something that I believe. Now, fortunately, this time, it's not about that, okay? It is about something completely different, and it's more about the experience of when you're dating. Or, to be more specific, when you're on a date. Now, I stumbled across a particularly interesting video by Kevin Miner, who on IG goes by Minermind, who is an actor and a poet, and I guess maybe even an influencer as well, who was busy talking about his experience getting back into the dating scene after being in a long-term relationship, and how relationships used to make boring things seem fun. Now, I do have the clip here which I want to play where he was detailing his experience, but I don't even think it's about how relationships made things fun. I feel like it was more about how dates for a lot of people, I don't know whether I can say including past and present or just present, might be a little bit more work than they probably should be. At least as far as the experience of trying to put up a face is concerned. But anyways, before I can get into my thoughts on it and say much more, let me just let the clip play, then I can give my thoughts on the entire thing. So, without further ado...
One thing I miss about being in a relationship is the ability to make something boring interesting. For context, I left my long-term relationship a few months ago, and I've been going through the motions, but also part of that means putting myself out there and meeting new people. And I'm just learning that while you're on a date with someone you're not in a relationship with, you cannot just say anything. You cannot just be pouring out your mind. So tell me why the other day I'm on a date with this beautiful babe. It's a beautiful dinner date. The ambience is ambiancing. The jazz music is doing its thing in the background. And then me, the dinner sesh. I don't know what comes over me, but I just think to myself and I look at her and I say, by the way, unajua it's been a while since nikule mabuyu. And have you ever heard of the pin drop silence? I think I noticed her face, when the eyebrow twitches, like, huh? In my head, I'm thinking, maybe she's a bougie babe, a dream mabuyu. So I go on to this historical rant and I'm telling her, mabuyu is this traditional candy from baobab seeds. And as I'm talking, I'm noticing her face. And I'm just like, yeah, majorly in the coastal region. And it was a bit too late, but I could see what she was saying, that look of, why are you telling me this shit? If I think about it from a relationship perspective, if you tell your partner, by the way, it's been a while since Nikule Mabuyu, that shit is interesting. Your partner even jumps in like, aya, walai, what do you mean? Unajua hata siku hizi wako na za green, za red, za brown, za black, wewe itabidi tupigie Mama Halima. Suddenly you're bonding over Mabuyus. So now this is a new fear unlocked. I'm not kidding. This is a new fear unlocked because I realized dates are not a safe space. And so now I'm just curious, like when you guys are out there, do you have like editorial techniques in your mind that tell you like, nah, this is more of like a 5th date conversation. This is more of like a 3rd date conversation. Because, man, you still basi nakimbia. And especially when you feel like it means a lot to you, like at that point I was like, I haven't had Mabuyu in a while. Can we talk about this?
Okay. This was a particularly interesting thing that the guy posted up, and I'm not gonna lie, it's very ironic because I was having Mabuyu last night, but anyways, that's sort of besides the point. The whole point was, you can't use dates as a safe space, of which I feel like off the jump, that's kind of been the case. Like, you're going to introduce yourself to a stranger. It's like saying that going for an interview means that you're going into a safe space. Oh, there's definitely going to be some shit that you edit out. Although, before I can say much, because I have some thoughts on this entire experience of his, which may or may not sound as good, because I am going to side with the guy, and it might seem like I have something against, the women's side or anything, but it's not really the case. Actually, I feel like this entire thing that I'm talking about affects both genders. Just the fact that going on a date is, a very different experience. Like, I feel like for most people, regardless of gender, you may go through something like this, or you might have gone through something like this. Now, first of all, I'm gonna be very honest. This was very refreshing for me. Like, don't get me wrong, it's not like I wasn't seeing a couple of errors here and there, or like stuff that I'd want to talk about, but just as a topic to discuss on this podcast, even as something to hear about when it comes to dates, like, this was very refreshing for me. Mainly because, for the most part, whenever we're doing the whole discussion on dates, and I've said this before, like, people focus so much on the money aspect of it. Like, nowadays, whenever you're hearing online discussions about when you go out on a date with someone, it's, oh, who's going to sort out the bill? Oh, how are you supposed to dress? Are you supposed to have sex on the first date? Like, there's all of these things that people will discuss, and like, they're not even the most important bits of it, because to some degree I find them quite shallow. Because, okay, fine, you guys want to discuss dress code, fine, why is that such a big issue? Like, you guys are discussing who should pay for the date. Like, if the both of you are earning class individuals, I think that shouldn't be that big of an issue. Even though someone is gonna come and be like, but Denver, oh, the man has to. We're not discussing that shit. I honestly couldn't give a shit. Like, for the most part, when you look at those three topic bases, they're not even all that big as far as the main reason why people go on dates, or like what the date is useful for. What I'm trying to say is, I love the fact that this guy isn't focusing on those, but he's focusing on the interactions that people have. Like, the actual getting to know each other, which I feel like is even more important than the other things that I was busy discussing earlier on. But that said, considering that this guy recently broke up, or should I say has been single for a couple of months and got out of a long-term relationship, I will be very honest, I don't know if the guy should have started dating again this soon. Now, don't get me wrong, the guy could have already healed, depending on how fast you heal. If you started healing even before you guys broke up, if you were done with the relationship beforehand, like, there could have been many other things that can make you heal a lot faster and move on to someone else a lot faster. Or, maybe you were just, feeling like you're pretty good at that point, so you want to go. But the way I know a lot of people, whenever it comes to, getting out of a relationship, more so a long-term one, it usually takes a while before you can properly heal or just get yourself to the point where you are perfectly capable of going out on dates and not making any comparisons. Because one of the biggest issues that I see sometimes is when someone gets out of a relationship and they say that, I'm done with this, I'm ready to go back out into the market, and they go back out after a very short period of time, they haven't healed, and they expect the same things that their relationship was giving them, it can kind of be unfair to whoever it is that you're going on dates with. Because you have this very high expectation and this level of so-called comfort whereby, like, you are expecting that this and this is supposed to be simple because this and this was what used to happen to me. And yet that's not really the case. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think that's his expectation. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But there's a likelihood of doing that, if not you being in a position where you're still hung up on your ex. But you know what, that wasn't even my main bit that I had wanted to talk about, but I feel like it's something that should be mentioned to a lot of people. When you get out of a relationship, giving it some time before you get back into the dating scene is usually important, not just for the sake of you finding yourself, but so that you can also open yourself up beyond what it is that you and your partner had that created some level of comfort, and for you to open up the space to other people, not just a replacement for your ex. But anyways, that's also kind of besides the point, because that wasn't even to do with the actual date. One of the first things that you kind of notice when you get back out into the dating scene is just the newness of it. Like, if you were dating back then, like, let's say, for example, you weren't very faithful, or you've been in the dating scene for quite a long time, it's never usually all that hard. You kind of get used to the uncertainty of meeting different people, going out on dates, if you're into that kind of thing, whether there's a Netflix and chill involved. Like, there's a lot of those things that are fairly normal to people that have been in the dating scene for a good amount of time. But for someone that's getting out of a relationship, more so a long-term one, there's a way it kind of feels new, and it's almost like you're learning how to ride a bike again for the first time. Because more often than not, whenever you're in a long-term relationship, you do not think of yourself ever getting back into the dating scene. This is something that a lot of guys usually go through, and I can even say for myself, because I've been in a position where I felt like I'm done dating, because I feel like I found someone. Like, you get to a point where it's like now you're almost learning how to do it all over again from scratch, which is a very, very interesting feeling, because even though you're the hottest guy on the planet, you look at it and you're like, this shit is supposed to be much easier. Why don't I know how to do shit? Because it's like you're almost being made to redo KCSE again, and now you have to go and start reading the books and start learning everything again, even though you probably already passed with flying colors. So it's a very interesting feeling, and it's a bit of a culture shock and experience for a lot of guys and even women. And one of the interesting bits about that readjustment is how, especially if it happens again and again and again, it's almost like the streets will feel dirtier than ever. Like, you will be back into the dating scene and it'll feel just like everyone just wants something from you. If you're a guy, it's like women just want you to be paying for shit. If you're a babe, it's like dudes just want to screw you by like the first date. Like, people have very weird behaviors. There's people that, you look at their behaviors and you can see that there are trauma response and they haven't healed. Other times you're looking at people and they just have fucked up hygiene, or they don't know how to talk nicely, or they have zero respect, or they have an attitude. Like, there's all of these things that are going to hit you at once, and learning to adapt is going to be one of the first things that'll be quite the challenge for a lot of people when they get back into the dating scene, which is why the guy was kind of yearning for the comfort of being in a relationship again, where it's like, I can just say this and there's nothing wrong with it. But the truth of it is, the relationship is over, and that adjustment might take him a while, and it's hard to figure it out at first, but eventually over time you get to learn. So for him, his coping method is now he has to learn how to put up walls and how to censor himself and shit. But there's other bits that he's going to learn over time, which I'm sure will definitely teach him how to be better in the dating scene, or how to act or react better when he's in the dating scene, or in the streets, whatever it is that you want to call it. And as he deals with that, he may end up having to deal with a bunch of distrust and discomfort, because like, he's not comfortable saying some things to the babe, yet he should be. Like, ideally that should be the case. But at the same time, like, he's looking at someone, he doesn't know whether to be vulnerable enough to just say random shit, and yet this is someone that you're very interested in, which is a bit of an interesting yet sort of jarring experience for someone like him. And I can get that. Like, for some people it could even go a little bit further, where you have distrust, because especially if you've heard a shit ton of stories of, like, the cheating cases, you don't know if a babe taking an Uber that you're paying for after the date is going home, or if she's going to a dude's place. Although I don't think that will be the biggest issue for him, and maybe for a couple of other guys, not unless if you've spent a shit ton of time on the internet listening to some of the wild stories that people have. So for the most part, it's just adjusting to that discomfort. Now, all that said, even though I can say all of this to kind of prepare, the next person that might be, new to the dating scene again or anything of the sort, I do kind of feel for him, because from that experience, I feel like just that whole Mabuyo experience would have probably, or should probably be already telling him that this isn't someone that I would be going on multiple other dates with. Now, of course, it's not like it's a red flag or there's anything wrong with the babe, but just the fact that she did not resonate on that same frequency with him is one of those things that can easily show you that if you guys are to get together, it's not that you guys won't last, but if you're going to last, you guys are going to have to do a lot of adjustment for each other, just so that you can be normal with each other. And I say this because if you're on a date and you feel comfortable enough with someone that you want to show a little bit more of yourself, I think that's perfectly okay. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a reason why people will say when you go for a date, always, bring the best of yourself, or always give the best of yourself so that you can give a pretty good impression. And that's there for a reason. Of course, it's not like you want to be super comfortable that, you're lifting your ass to fart and shit. Like that is definitely a no-no, because, how many people are comfortable with that on the first date? But beyond that, it's more about showing how good of an option you are. Not necessarily an option per se, but how good of a person you are. And how, potentially suitable you would be for the next person. But even with that said, it's not like you're doing it for one person or one side is doing it for the other. Both sides have to be trying to show the best of themselves. So if you're doing that and you can't exercise a certain level of comfort, I feel like at that point you're basically trying to put up a face where you're trying to show the best, but you're not trying to show the best of yourself, which I feel like more people should be doing, because essentially dates are about getting to know the other person. Even though we're trying to show the best of ourselves, we want to at least get to know the other person, and we want the other person to get to know us to some degree, such that if there is interest developed in wanting to get to know more about the other person and, possibly have something with this other person, then at least now you'll be making that decision as an informed decision, not just purely out of lust or purely because you just like the person that you're seeing. Because more often than not, you find that someone that might seem very beautiful might have a very shit attitude. Someone that might not be that good looking might have some of the best personality you've ever experienced. So you getting to know each other during that first date but still having some comfort is something that kind of has to be there from the jump. Because dates are a learning process, and if you can't get to learn as much as possible from the other person, and they can't learn as much as possible from you, then why are you guys going on a date in the first place? Like, y'all might be attracted to each other, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you guys should really take it all that far in the first place if you're not really all that interested in getting to know about the other person. So if I was to give the guy some advice, I'd have probably said, you know what, be comfortable being you, and be comfortable with the fact that they may not like you afterwards, because at the end of the day, you might be an attractive person, you might be likable to a bunch of people, but the real you, the most comfortable version of you, that one shouldn't appeal to everyone. And you know what? That's okay. That's actually very okay. It's not like it's everyone's job to understand you and who you are. Which kind of leads me to my conclusion in all of this, which is there's nothing wrong with being yourself on a date and talking about mabuyus. Personally, I feel like as far as random things to be brought up, that is like the least bad thing that he could have done. You should be yourself when you go out on a date. Although, the best version of yourself, that is. And truth is, if someone wants to be with you, it won't really matter. It really shouldn't. And if it does, maybe they're just not right for you. Or if you really, really want it to work out, you guys have to be ready to put in quite a lot of work as far as compromise and really, really getting to understand each other is concerned. Although, then again, with all of that said, maybe I'm wrong and maybe he should have carried himself a little bit better on that date. I don't know. I could be wrong about that one, but either way, I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open. On IG, it is at the breaktime_podcast. On Facebook, it is at the breaktime podcast. On X, it is at bagakathed. And on Bluesky, it is at the breaktimepod.bsky.social. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.
But what I believe is that if you put a pastor and a prostitute in one room, one is likely to convert the other.